So why are youth leaving the church? You may have heard through Barna Research and places like that that we've been losing about 70 to 80% of our young people for years now at the Christian church. And that is not happening with all religions. So the Mormons have a better retention ratio with their young people. Orthodox Jewish people do as well. And the Muslims also have better retention rates than we do. So obviously, they're doing things that we're not. We're doing things that they're not. And we can get better at retaining our youth. Why are we spending the vast sums of money that we spend raising kids through children's church up to the youth group if we're not doing a great job? Our youth are our future. And to some degree, when you talk to Christians, a lot of Christians, I don't know if it's a sense of fatalism or apocalyptic thinking, but a lot of them aren't thinking about where is the church going to be in 20 years? And are we preparing our youth to be the future leaders of Christianity? So this whole type of thinking has to change in Christianity. Well, many churches, when they have their youth group and they graduate them, the youth leave the church and there's literally nowhere for them to go. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and there's very few churches that have young adult groups. Well, we know years ago the thinking was we will graduate them out of our youth groups and then they will come back to us when they have children. But we're finding, of course, that that is no longer happening. Why would youth come back to a church that they don't have strong attachments to? And many churches are graduating their youth and then not really talking to them afterwards. They graduate and they are out the door, and the church focuses on the members that are giving and tithing. And then sometimes those people do have input about things that they would like to see for their children or youth, but a lot of times those things don't line up with what the church needs for strong Christian leaders to be produced in society. Recently, I talked to a young lady who had graduated from the youth group, and she was deconstructing her faith, and so I wanted to have a talk with her and find out what her experience was at the youth group. Well, she said she did not have many friends, that the youth group was sort of cliquey. There was sort of an in-group and an out-group, so in that aspect, it was just like the high school that she went to, and was not that great of an experience. The church really didn't have much input into helping her make her future decisions about maybe finding a potential spouse or college or trade school or whatever her plans were. There was not much involvement. She didn't really have any adult mentors. And anytime we discuss problems like this that we're facing in the church, I always want to talk about solutions and maybe groups out there that are doing a good job. Recently, some organizations that did great with Christian youth were the Masters Commission, which was run by the Assemblies of God under Lloyd Ziegler, and Honor Academy, which Ron Luce ran with Teen Mania. And both of those organizations, they did a very good job of taking young people maybe out of high school and discipling them for maybe a year or two in between high school and their adult life. And they would really pour into the young people, getting them involved, getting them active, working them, training them, but giving them a real sense of belonging and purpose and mission. And we really need to be doing this starting from junior high on through the youth group. And I believe that is the future template and model for youth ministry. Is we only have so much time with these young people, and if we are not there for them during those critical years, other groups will be. So when I hear about youth groups that don't have activities and projects on the weekends or the holidays or the summers, you can bet there are going to be competitive groups that are going to be trying to snatch our young people. So this young girl that I had talked with, she really didn't have friends in the youth group. I asked her if she knew any evidences for the resurrection of Jesus. She really didn't know an evidence for a resurrection of Jesus. Did she have any pride when it came to Christian history? Did she know about the fact that Christianity helped bring orphanages and hospitals and literacy all around the world? She did not know any of that. And her church had a reputation of being very academic. She went through the Bible probably 15 times between elementary school and her high school years. But she didn't know any of this stuff outside of the Bible that really drives pride, that drives a sense of, wow, I'm really belonging to something. And when I was a pastor years ago, I believe we really operated a good youth program. And one thing we found was that we always had about 20 to 25% of the church that was in some type of crisis or struggle. There were elderly people that needed their lawns mowed, that needed their houses cleaned, that maybe sometimes needed rides to the hospital or to church. There were disabled people that needed rides to church, that needed someone to kind of be a friend to them, that maybe take them somewhere during the week. We had people that were sick. We had young mothers that sometimes needed a hand with their kids getting from one place to another, or needed maybe a teenage mentor for their younger child. So we found that the youth a lot of times had this extra time on their hands, and that boredom was sort of eating them from the inside out. They were trying to fill it with video games or whatever, but not anything meaningful. So we decided to take this available labor force, put them to work with the tasks that were needed. And we found that both groups thrived. The young people would form relationships with these people that they were helping in a special way. The people that were getting helped formed bonds with the young people in the youth group that was helping them. And maybe a poor couple in the church might have a tree limb collapse and fall on their roof. Well, we would grab a deacon and maybe a couple guys, and then we knew we could send a handful of guys from the youth group out there, fix that tree limb, get that tree limb out of the house, do some drywall work. And while this was happening, the deacon and the men were building the relationships with the young men. The young men were building relationships with each other. So you might have the quarterback of the football team sawing a tree limb to pieces with someone maybe from band or art class that normally in the youth group would stay maybe in different silos. But when you work together, those bonds begin to break down. So we found this putting the young people to work and also meeting the needs of the church was a great mixture. Now, we didn't just keep it to work, because we made sure that the young people also had activities and that they were able to celebrate in exchange for the hard work that they were doing. So we had the pizza parties, we had the activities. We wanted to make sure that on the weekend, our young people had things to do. On the summertime, they had things to do, whether we were putting them to work or whether we were doing something fun. And we found that we needed balancing amounts of the work and the celebrations together, so that by the time our young people graduated, they had all these memories, all these things that they were a part of. We would honor the young people. Every week in church, we would talk about the different things that the young people had done, and we would honor them. You know, when they get up in front of the church and they're honored for things that they are doing, it's humbling and it's giving them meaning and purpose, and they'd feel proud. And we would also help them as they got closer to graduation. What is it you want to do college-wise or school-wise? We're going to help you. We're going to be there for you. And when it came time to graduation, we would always practically eulogize the members of the youth group before they went out into the world. And oftentimes, the young people would want to stick around maybe for an extra year or two and help be mentors on the youth group to keep doing what they were doing. If they did go off to trade school or if they went to college, a lot of times they would circle back around because the church had been such a part of their life. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Is we have somewhat of a youth crisis, but many of our youth groups, they're not having the relationships. They're not having the activities. On the other side, they're really not being trained in apologetics. They're not being trained in polemics. They don't have this sense of pride. They don't have this sense of history. So we really need to start having a dialogue about how are we training our youth? They're our most valuable asset. We spend all this time with them from when they're little to when they're in teens, and we need them. So we have to make sure that we have these boxes checked in training, in work, in putting them to good use in the church so that they feel valued, that they feel meaningful, that they've earned that self-esteem, that we've had other members of the church spend time with them, the older men with the younger men, the older women with the younger women, so that they've been mentored And young people need these combinations of peer relationships and adult relationships. Those organizations that I mentioned before, Honor Academy, that was a fantastic way where they would work those youth, give them projects that were meaningful, train them in leadership, and a good mixture of work and play together. The same thing with Master's Commission. Master's Commission would take the high school graduates and they would send them to a church just as a labor force to help with evangelism and ministry. And so often those Master's Commission young people would end up going into ministry. So that's sort of the thought for today. We have this high attrition rate with our young people, but many churches are not even aware of the attrition rate, and it's high. So there are things that we need to change. And the good news is as we begin to change this, as pastors and youth pastors begin to talk about this new paradigm of youth ministry, we can take that 80% loss ratio and transform it into an 80% retention ratio. And now you're talking exponential growth and new leaders for the church.